You know, Hunter x Hunter has some of my favorite protagonists of all time. I mean, you have Gon, Killua, Kurapika, and Hisoka. Such a powerhouse four they are. But actually, I feel like I'm forgetting someone. I think his name starts with an L? Oh, wow, what is it? It's like Lea or Luzo? No, it's more like Leo. Leo. Ah, that's right. It's Leol. I can't believe I almost forgot about Leol. But thankfully, Leol did not forget to subscribe to the New World Review for regular Hunter x Hunter content uploaded straight into his YouTube feed. Such a great protagonist Leol is. Hello and welcome to the New World Review, your source for everything anime and manga. And today it's time to address the Leorio in the room and to talk about exactly what has happened to one of our protagonists in the series. Because yes, while it may not seem like it, Leorio is still most certainly one of the 4 or 5, if you count Hisoka, protagonists that make up the heart and soul of Hunter x Hunter. However, compared to his peers, Leorio has been handed a bit of a rough deal. And I do think that a lot of this, rather unfortunately, stems from the fact that Hunter x Hunter is very clearly an improvised story from a meta perspective. A lot of work goes into planning out individual arcs, and Togashi is a phenomenal micro-narrative writer. But the broader plan was not in place, and what happened is that Togashi developed a handful of characters, a few broad concepts, hit the go button, and then I imagine he was probably just as surprised with every twist and turn the story took as we were. And the amazing thing is that for the most part, this has worked in great favor of Hunter x Hunter, allowing Togashi to follow whatever his passion of the day is, and create an incredibly compelling story and characters based around it. However, this kind of organic storytelling does also have its flaws, and one of them can be clearly seen in the character of Leorio. But to really get into this, let's examine Leorio's initial role in the series, because at the inception of Hunter x Hunter, Leorio formed a pillar of perfect balance amongst the main cast. The initial team of 4, consisting of Leorio, Gon, Killua, and Kurapika, was a tried and tested formula guaranteed to succeed. And I say this because initially Togashi began by producing, let's face it, a carbon copy of what we'll call the Yu Yu Hakusho formula that was applied to his former mega hit series of the same name. And yes, there are very distinct personality differences between the protagonists of Yu Yu Hakusho and Hunter x Hunter, but archetypally speaking, Gon is Yusuke, Killua is Hiei, Kurapika is Kurama, and Leorio was given the honor of being Kuwabara. And I say honor quite seriously, because what Kuwabara represented in Yu Yu Hakusho was the angry but charming idiot with a heart of gold, and a character designed to be universally enjoyed for any number of those aspects. Now, the primary difference from a mechanical standpoint between Kuwabara and Leorio is that Leorio is very much kept out of the combat side of the series, which was a nice difference actually, because it meant that Togashi had to find a new and interesting way to incorporate Leorio into various situations without him just conjuring a spirit sword and blasting his way to victory. However, what it also resulted in was Leorio's primary role amongst the main cast being that of comic relief as well as moral backbone. And during the first 2 arcs of Hunter x Hunter, Leorio absolutely excelled in those areas. In terms of comic relief, Leorio was a godsend amongst a group of very pure characters like Gon, or overly serious and stoic existences like Killua and Kurapika. But more importantly, I mentioned that Leorio had the task of being the moral backbone of the group, which can seem like a bit of a joke at first because on the surface level, he has incredible flaws like being a bit of a pervert and obsessed with money. But when you think back to the Hunter exam arc specifically, the large majority of inspiring dramatic beats are given to Leorio to deliver. For example, in the Swindler's Swamp section, where the group encountered Hisoka and decided to split up and run. Now, up until this point, you would expect Leorio to be the first one to flee as well. In fact, he'd probably be the person to run fastest, which is what you would expect from a comic relief character. But instead of running, Leorio returns to face Hisoka one-on-one without a hope in the world of victory, and he does so due to a simple personal belief. And this is one of the most powerful moments of the Hunter exam arc in my opinion. But we can also find another one in the final phase where it would be Leorio who encourages Killua not to give in to Illumi's psychological manipulation. In any other shonen series, that speech probably would have been given to the main character, although I guess Gon was out of action by this point. However, the idea still stands. Leorio was made to be the heart of this quartet, and that is only further solidified when we discover that his motives for wanting mass quantities of money is that so that he can become a doctor and treat people for free. And in that moment, Leorio becomes more pure than any character introduced thus far, and it makes the other 3 protagonists look downright selfish in comparison. Although I will say that Leorio's motivation is unfortunately most certainly a primary factor in contributing to his disappearance from the series, which I'll get into in a second. But at this stage, it's also very important to highlight that Leorio, as a character, can only function as part of a group dynamic. He's funny and inspiring, both heavily desirable traits, but those alone cannot push him further in a world like this. He needs the strength of characters like Gon and Killua, as well as the shrewd intelligence of someone like Kurapika to progress. And actually, in the initial arcs of the series, I would argue that this is the same for the entire group. These 4 formed a symbiotic relationship, where they effectively became a super being capable of tackling any challenge that came their way. And in most shonen series, an author would be an absolute fool to disturb that balance. It's kind of like forcibly breaking up the Beatles and watching them all follow their solo careers. But that is exactly what Togashi would come to do, because the story he wanted to tell had evolved from that of a typical shonen battle manga. And after 2 arcs in the series, this fantastic foursome was broken up and would never properly be reformed. And this left Leorio in a very tricky position, because out of all of the characters in this group, he was the one who was really unable to survive in his own right, due both to his lack of power as well as his primary motivating factor. And to explain the latter, let's first take a look at, say, Kurapika. When the band broke up, Kurapika went on to have a phenomenal solo outing because he was driven to the core by his desire to reclaim the eyes of his clan members and take revenge on the Phantom Troop. This very simple idea is what allowed Togashi to grant Kurapika the power he needed to achieve such a thing, as well as the narrative flexibility to put him into a particularly dramatic story because he has a clear set of goals and enemies. In contrast, Leorio does not. His goal in life is much more noble. He wants to heal people, and the biggest challenge in regards to that is acquiring the knowledge and the money to do so. So while Kurapika was vigorously training, Leorio was, rather understandably, vigorously at work studying medicine. And while that is perfect in terms of a character choice to make, it does have the effect of making Leorio very difficult to incorporate into the story in any meaningful capacity, at least in this story, which was still very battle focused. Leorio has no enemy to seek out, nor does he have a reason to seek any kind of power. In fact, he goes so far as to refuse to learn Nen in order to focus on his studies, which once again is a perfect character choice to make, but it really does not help him in terms of making him a primary aspect of the drama at hand, which from Heaven's Arena onwards was all centered on Nen. And you can't really blame Togashi for this. I mean, when he began Hunter x Hunter, he may have had vague ideas about Nen, but he almost certainly had no clear vision on how it would be implemented and how this group of characters would go about applying it to their own individual desires. But Leorio is very much a victim of this lack of planning, a remnant if you will, and one that Togashi did try to use as best he could in York New City, but it just wasn't anywhere near the same as his relevance to the Hunter exam and Zoldyck family arcs. And then of course the darkest period for Leorio would be upon us, as after the conclusion of York New City, we went immediately into the back-to-back eternity that is Greed Island, followed by the Chimera Ant arc. And Leorio had absolutely no place in either of these, once again due almost exclusively to his core motivation. But here's the thing, you could make an argument that Leorio would have been useful, less so during Greed Island I guess, but in regards to the Chimera Ants, sure, why not? If characters like Hikarugo and Melioron can play an integral role in the palace invasion, then why can't Leorio? And once again, it comes back to simply because he was not developed enough in terms of Nen. If Leorio had immediately trained like the rest of the protagonists, then by the Chimera Ant arc, he could have developed his own unique utility Hatsu, like Melioron's God's Accomplice for example. I mean, Leorio still would not have been a part of the main action, but he would have had a function on the team, which is how this character is best utilized. But with no Nen and no profound desire to learn it, then there was nothing that could have been done. He was, for all intents and purposes, a regular old human. And by this time, Hunter x Hunter had long evolved to a point where regular humans had no place in current events. I mean, even when you think of Komugi, she is no regular human. And now that isn't to say that Leorio would never have his time to shine again, as during the 13th Hunter Chairman election arc, he had, a decent grasp on Nen, but even then Leorio was used as an auxiliary factor, with Jing manipulating the greater situation surrounding him. And to be fair, that was completely fine. Having Leorio run for chairman was both hilarious and compelling, because at this point I had really missed his character, and it was the first time since the Zoldyck arc that his full potential in the series had even come close to being realized. But even then, it doesn't quite get there. Gon was out of action, Kurapika was nowhere to be seen, and Killua had his own task at hand, so there was no one for Leorio to bounce off. And that is very important, because that dream team scenario where he slots perfectly into that formula does still exist. If these four were to ever reunite, Leorio would be a perfectly fine addition to the team. Almost integral, I would say. However, it's practically guaranteed that this is never going to happen. So where does that leave Leorio in the modern day? Well, Leorio is still somewhat involved in the story as a member of the Zodiacs no less, which is nice, very nice. I love that he's aboard the Black Whale 1 and in the thick of all the Succession War business, but even then he's still only going to be a feature on the outskirts. With the princes, the Phantom Troop, Hisoka, Kurapika, Illumi, and everything else happening on the ship, Leorio is once again completely outclassed, and it's going to be very difficult to give him the same kind of dramatic oomph that he was once able to command. But even with all of this in mind, there is still one bit of hope. A teeny tiny bit, but it's there, and this springs up because after the Succession War, Hunter x Hunter is more than likely going to need a new key protagonist to follow. And I say this because Kurapika's story threads are all completely tied up in this war. The last of the Scarlet Eyes, the Phantom Troop, the ever self-sacrificing Emperor time, it's all there. I've got a video on it if you want to watch it. But once we get to the Dark Continent, I think that he is going to be out of the picture. At which point, someone needs to take that place. Now there are other prime candidates such as Jing, or maybe even bringing back Gon or Killua, but those last two are a very maybe situation. So the Dark Continent may actually be set up as a chance for Leorio to truly shine, because it's not as if he has no drive to be there. The Dark Continent has all sorts of crazy benefits for humanity, like a herb that can cure thousands of diseases. So it's not impossible, although it is highly unlikely. In the end, once again, I keep coming back to this, but he is just not proficient enough to be the center of attention at this stage in the story. However, part of me does really enjoy the theoretical contrast that he would provide if he did helm the Dark Continent arc. I mean, just imagine this, quite possibly the weakest Nen user to potentially set foot on this land, going up against the most terrifying threats that we have ever faced in Hunter x Hunter, and then watching Leorio overcome those feats in his own unique way. Because that's the thing, it's very easy to get caught up in strength and power, as even I have in this video, but Hunter x Hunter has never really been about that, even at the very top levels of combat. Because you can have an existence like Meruem, who is supremely dominant over everyone and everything, but then you can also have an existence like Komugi, who comes along and just trounces him at Gungi. You can never quite tell how two beings will interact, and if Togashi really wanted to, I think that presents a huge amount of potential within Leorio. But of course, Togashi has never really wanted to use Leorio like that in the entirety of Hunter x Hunter, so once again, it does become a bit difficult to see him starting now. It's far more likely that he will continue to be relegated to the background for the remainder of the series. Regardless, I will always remember early Leorio fondly and continue to enjoy his rare yet hilarious and often touching appearances in Hunter x Hunter. But what do you guys think? Would you like to see Leorio back in the spotlight? Feel free to comment with your answer down below. And if you're keen for more Hunter x Hunter content, then please do check out some of my other videos and even subscribe to the channel for regular Hunter x Hunter glory uploaded straight into your YouTube feeds. This has been the New World Review, and I'll see you next time.